Hey there, everybody. Did you miss me? I sure missed you. It's your old buddy, Josh Davenport, creator of RGBros, the comic you're currently watching being made right before your eyes in spectacular time-lapse vision. Uh, this one here is about the NES Classic and the Nintendo Switch that's coming out next year, which I'm very excited about. I've been making a lot of jokes at Nintendo's expense lately because their product fulfillment has been god awful. But I'm still going to enjoy the hell out of both those things whenever I can get my hands on them. Moving Reggie around. I find I'm doing that a lot more recently. Is drawing in one place and just moving. That's the great thing about doing work digitally. Is if you get something just slightly off from where you want it to be, you just slide it right over. 2 seconds. It's like having robots work for you. I think I made Reggie's sleeves a little longer in this comic than I normally do. I have to go back and put two side by side to tell for sure. But I do think the sleeves are a little longer. Drawing old Reggie number 2. Some people think he's Reggie number 1 in this scenario, but I always put Reggie from the comic first. So Reggie Fils-Ami or Phil's Ames or however you want to butcher his last name is making his second appearance in RGBros comics. He was in a previous comic in 2015 having to do with Metroid Prime, not Metroid Prime, that Metroid game that came out that wasn't really a Metroid game because Samus wasn't really in it. What the heck is that thing called? Prime Ball Blasters or something. I can't even remember the name of it. Yeah, who cares? I mean, I love Metroid games. They're some of my favorite games of all time, but I could give less than 2 craps about that. Here I am drawing a Nintendo, or part of a Nintendo logo on the side of this truck that's going to disappear very shortly because I figured out, hey, genius, you didn't give yourself enough room to actually draw the characters you're going to be talking in this frame. Sometimes I just don't know what I'm thinking. Every once in a while I get in this little notebook here that I have a few notes written down on that I'm looking at right now, and I'll kind of pre-plan some of the frames before I start drawing, especially now that I'm recording these live. Well, not live, but I'm recording them as I go along, and I try not to, edit out any of the process. So it's more real, man. It's raw. It's in your face. But, yeah, so I kind of plot out where things are going to be and stuff like that in a little notebook first on lined paper, like a child. Instead of a real artist, whatever that is. And even then, every once in a while, I don't give myself enough room. So you see a lot of shifting, moving. Same thing with Reggie in the first frame. Moved him just a little bit. Not really supremely stoked about the way Reggie looks in that second frame. In pencils, I think I made it up for it in the ink department. Here in a minute, I make him look a little bit better. Drew those boxes really crappily inside the truck. And there, you might notice that if you watch enough of these videos, every once in a while you'll see just like a blob show up, a little blip. And 97% of the time, just pulling that figure out of my ass, the Unova tablet that I draw on works absolutely fine. Every once in a while, like you put the pin on there and the pressure will just make a circle that's the exact full pressure size of the pin tool. And then after that, you just go back one step, undo, Control Z or whatever, and it goes right back to working perfectly fine. But every once in a while, you do run into that where it just goes whole hog into the pressure sensitivity. And here we can see Reggie Fils-Ami throwing out the little smoochy lips for close, intimate whispering. And speaking of mistakes that I make, this Nintendo Switch logo I put on all these boxes is not the actual Nintendo Switch logo. It's just like a really crappy drawing of the Switch controller, like when you take the controls off the side of the screen and put them together. And I don't know why in my head as I was drawing this, I'm like, yeah, that's the logo. That's the way it is. And then after I made the comic, I looked it up and I'm like, close enough. Because I didn't want to go back and fix it. Because that would have taken more time. And here I am doing something I normally don't do, which is I'm doing a lot of this pin work on the exact same layer. So you'll notice I'm making like separate lines between Reggie's fingers there when I'm doing his, what are those, the lapels or whatever on his jacket. Typically I'll just draw straight through because I'll be on a different layer. And just did not do it that time. I don't know what possessed me to not go the route that I normally do, but I was trying, I guess, to speed up my workflow, going with just trying to get things as close as possible on the first pass without doing multiple layers and worrying about going back and erasing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I find that it looks better, and I tend to get cleaner lines and everything when I just use separate layers. But again, it takes a little extra time. But that's all part of making the art, my children. There we go, yeah. I fixed a little bit of that weird nose area that I got on Reggie there. Doing the old sideburns. I'm not going to claim I'm particularly good at making Reggie's traps, right there back behind the neck, always consistent. I like to draw him hunched up a lot because I spend a lot of my time hunched over or hunched up, and it's not good. It's not good for your back, but Reggie doesn't do what's best for him. I don't do what's best for me either sometimes, and so a lot of people don't. Art imitates life and so forth and some such. Here we get it. Sorry to continuously harp on the fingers, but again, we're here in a comic that I drew where we have one person who is a real life person that I was trying to draw and giving him 5 fingers, and then you have Reggie in there with his 3. And so my brain's just like, make him into some sort of aberrant mutant or whatever. If you see these nice clean lines I made on the truck, which I did not also use on the taillights of the truck for some reason. If you're using Photoshop or you're using Manga Studio or Clip Studio Paint, you don't know how to just get a clean straight line out of using the pen tool or whatever, just hold shift and make your line and it'll be straight. Now you'll get you're not going to get pressure sensitivity with that or anything. It's going to make a line that's the exact full dimensions. Yeah, I don't know what the brush size dimensions, whatever that you're going to get. I also didn't use it on the boxes in the truck, which I probably should have, but I don't use that a lot. Just whenever I feel like I really have to have a straight line, I'll use the shift and do method, because I always have to change my brush size. I typically work, if you'll watch the side panel there, work at a 50 brush size for most of my pen work. It just seems to be the way it works out. Gives me the best play as far as heavier lines and thinner lines, but if I'm doing a straight line like that, I'll typically go down to something sometimes even as low as a 5 for that. Here's a pregnant pause in the video. Ooh, move it on. While we're doing a little bit of this inking in here, I'll fill you in. I think last week I was talking a little bit about playing that game Let It Die, which is that free-to-play game on the PlayStation 4, and I was kind of, complaining about it a lot, which, there's definitely stuff to complain about in that game. The further you get into it, the better it gets. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of kinks that work their way out, and they give you a lot more. They open up a lot more options the more you play the game. And, it is a free-to-play game, so you run into a little bit of junk. I haven't died a whole lot in it, so I haven't had to, even be prompted to pay for what are called, death tokens or whatever those things are. It's whatever allows you to continue after you die in the game. I'm sure if you die a ton, it's one of those things where it's you got to wait till the next day before you can play again or whatever. I haven't run across that yet, but still in the fairly low levels of the tower in the game. But, like I said last time, it's got, a fun aesthetic, and the game is nowhere near as precise as Dark Souls. A lot of people are, comparing it to Dark Souls. Some people saying it'll scratch that itch. It does a little bit in the fact that, you got some running around. You have stamina. You really have to measure when you strike and stuff like that. Where it's not like Dark Souls is that the lock-on targeting is very wonky. very wonky. And then the blocking and dodging. It seems like dodging just decimates your stamina at any point, and then blocking is, I don't want to say inconsistent. I mean, you can block, but the fact of the matter is, blocking's not going to get you out of any situation. There's a lot of times where if like you run up on 3 enemies, you're going to get locked into a corner, and they're just not going to let you out. And I didn't find that to be the case a lot in like Dark Souls, something like that. There's a couple of instances where it just feels like in Dark Souls, I never feel like I died because the game was being cheap. In Let It Die, there's definitely been a couple times already where I felt like, this is kind of some bullshit. When I've been backed into a corner and just had 3 people just railing on you and destroy you. And it doesn't matter how much you block or whatever. Like your just equipment gets busted and then you're dead. But I digress. Not taking back everything I said about it. It's fun. It's free. So, you're not out anything by playing it. There's definitely stuff to pay for in there, but I haven't done any of that yet. I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying I haven't run into a real big reason to. So we're getting the backgrounds here. I usually, add a few marks in just to add some, texture to the backgrounds. I didn't really feel like I needed it in this one because I was making those shadows of boxes piled up inside whatever storage facility this comic is taking place in. I don't know what is in all those boxes. Maybe NES Classics they're sending to Malaysia. I saw a picture of some store in Malaysia the other day that had tons of NES Classics. They had at least 100 of them stacked up. I don't think any store in America got 100 of those. But of course, we're a lot bigger than Malaysia. So that was probably all of Malaysia, and their supply was in that one store. If you noticed a second ago, I was trying to do some weird eye shading on Reggie back there. It just didn't work out. I'm trying to think about whether to add shadow from the floppy hair that comes down in front of his face or not. I find most of the time now it works out. Not. I may change my mind on that in the future. I reserve that right. It's my right. You can't take my rights from me. Old neck shadow. I put the neck shadow in a lot now. And sleeve shadow. Those are 2 of the big things. Oh, yeah. Get a good look. This is me trying to be better. Here I am actually, put the script in old Google Drive and typed it out so that this portion goes a lot quicker. You don't have to sit there watching me type something in, erase it, type something in, erase it, type something in, erase it. Not only does making your script ahead of time give you more of a chance to edit yourself, but when it comes to if you're like me and you're not hand drawing all of your lettering, then it makes the lettering portion go 10 times faster. You just go and plug and play. Get that there. Plus, you have the added bonus of it already being spell checked and mostly grammar checked, so you don't run into a lot of the issues where I know my wife will come in and be like, "Are you aware that you used your instead of Y-O-U-R instead of Y-O-U apostrophe R-E?" And I'm like, dang it. I'm still waiting, Nintendo. If anybody out there from Nintendo is listening or watching these things, I want to give you my money. I've got it. It's ready to go. I'll buy that NES Classic tomorrow if you give me the chance. It's ridiculous. Businesses are running. I think Think Geek today announced they're doing a lottery. Not a lottery to win an NES Classic. A lottery to win the chance to buy one at regular retail price. Which seems insane to me. But, I almost went off and entered it. I may still enter it because, you know what, I'd still like to get one of those things. And I don't want to wait until, February to get it when all the eBay sellers have realized that they're not going to be able to charge people $200 anymore. Racing these tails. And so it looks like we're wrapping up and coming close to the end of another RGBros Talk Time Lapse. Once again, these are brought to you by our patrons over on Patreon, who this week ended up getting a comic a day early. And it doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. And this week they did. So thank you everybody who is supporting and everybody who's watching. Hope you like it. Like and subscribe.